everybody. Welcome. Thank you guys so much for coming out on this very chilly Melbourne morning. It's been quite cold. This is Public Sector Innovation Month. Is everyone excited about that? Yay! And who do we have here today? Do we have folks in the public sector today? Yes? Yeah. Yes, excellent. We have people from different corporate land, startups. Yeah, cool. Fantastic mixture. We'll hopefully have a very robust discussion this morning, kicking off today's panel. Disrupting the government sector. I just want to say a quick thank you to Sean and the Collective Campus for putting this fantastic event together. The conference today will be great, and really encouraging you guys to get involved and put your hands up and get involved in this discussion, because it is in areas that you're working in, and getting some of those insights is great as well. So we will start off with today's discussion. It's a short panel discussion, and I just want to also show my respect and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, elders past and present as well. Also supporters supporting today's event, that startup show, and thanks, pretty much everybody. So my name, who I am, I'm Anna Reeves. I'm the CEO of that startup show. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, we are a live and online TV show that focuses on startup culture around the world. We've got a global audience of 1 million people, and we shoot downtown Melbourne in a pub down on the corner. We're shooting our second series at the end of this year. So if you are interested to find out more, definitely come and see me afterwards, because we're always looking for panelists and startups to appear on it as well. So let's kick off today. So look, we all want our food faster, our cars faster, our phones faster, our laundry faster, but do we want our government faster? So here with me today to help us answer that question and get us, enlighten us as to Government Superhighway 5.0 or whatever it is. We have some fantastic experts, 3 experts who I'd like to introduce to you today. So our first guest is the co-founder and technology director at DT Digital, a product development company that works with startups, social entrepreneurs and enterprises to help turn their ideas into sustainable businesses. He has a master's in engineering and has a background working from Australia's top-tier companies such as Deloitte, Isobar and DT Digital. Please welcome Mike Ebinum. Our next guest is the co-founder and chief innovation consultant at Collective Campus. He has spent time working with Macquarie Bank, Ernst & Young, KPMG before embarking on his own entrepreneurial journey, founding Hotdesk. It's an office sharing platform with almost 1,200 locations across Asia Pac. He's also a startup mentor, innovation writer, keynote speaker, and a board member of AgTech. And he has his own podcast, I believe. Future Squared. Future Squared, yes. Please welcome Steve Gillis. And our final guest is a super volunteer for Flux. Was a super volunteer for Flux for Australia's recent election. She's also a strong advocate for all matters open source and decentralisation, from food to software to governance. Some call her a super node, and a translator for developers, end users, connecting conversations so that projects can come to life with minimal chaos, although that is quite challenging, as we all know. Her expertise is bringing structure to ideas that forward humanity using blockchain technology. She's also the creator of the Bitcoin Doco and was the Melbourne Bitcoin Technology Centre's coordinator for RMIT student projects and the instigator of CryptoGos MBTC's fortnightly podcast. Please welcome Dale Dickens. So panel, obviously our topic today is, can government move at the speed of light? And I just want to open that up to you and ask you the question, should it? Should governments be moving at the speed of light?
I guess it comes back to the objective. So governments, like large organizations, have 2 purposes. One is to deliver upon existing business models, operational models, to provide the value that they want to provide. But the other is to improve and adapt and create new operational models. And the way you approach those is different. Obviously, you don't want everyone to think like an entrepreneur and go out and live the Facebook mantra, live fast and break things. I don't think the constituents would be too happy about that. But it is about how can we do better. I mean, if we look at IT spend in PPS, on average the last few years it's been about 3.5 billion, I think, across most government departments, which is insane. If you look at what companies like, and I'll talk about this in my talk later, like SpaceX, who are doing, well, if you look at SpaceX, one of the spaceships they created was something called the Dragon, which was about 330 times cheaper than Orion, which is what NASA did. And ultimately, this comes back to the mindsets, the methodologies, tools that we use to explore new operational models, to do things in fast-moving private sector companies versus public sector. And so we need to learn how to adapt a little bit quicker so we can create more value for constituents, because we can't keep spending that kind of money and not adapting because the world is moving too quickly.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts, Mike? Adaptability, that's something that's quite a critical component of the need to move. What are your experiences with adaptability in government organisations?
I think, as Steve said, you have to go back to the basics of why. What's the purpose of government? So, in summary, the purpose of government is to serve the people. And people, as you said, they want the laundry quicker, the coffee faster, the cars faster, they want the environment safer, all that stuff. So it's the purpose of government to deliver on that. Now, in the ways they deliver on that, and the traditional ways that they deliver on that is really not working, because they're not able to meet the needs of the people, the constituents, at the pace that people want. Now, not every government body needs to move at the speed of light, but they need to be able to keep up, and in some places probably innovate, because they have more resources, more access to opportunities. And the only key difference is within the private sector, people act on those opportunities, as opposed to it's a generalization, obviously, but as opposed to in government bodies where everything seems to be very slow moving. So adaptability is critical. It's thinking about what are the opportunities that we face. I don't say problems, because every problem is an opportunity. So what are the opportunities that we face? And the way government can look to adapt is by changing the culture and changing the mindset, which I think Steve is going to be talking about later.
I mean, I think, yeah, absolutely. The whole concept of, there's this absolute need to respond, but it's also got to be done in a way that's in service. Dale, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, it boils down to, do you want it faster? I mean, life is already quite fast, right? I worked on the Flux campaign at the previous election, and it sounds fantastic in theory, but it means the constituents putting forward or accepting bills as they come through, voting on them. So whatever is pertinent to you, whether that be climate change, whether that be fracking, whether that be same-sex marriage. What that would mean to you is that you're going to get notifications on your phone, more notifications to vote on the spot. Do you want that? Does somebody in government want to be handling that information immediately? It's up to us. It's, if you look at government, this is the debate, what is it? It's eventually, it's people. We're inviting a faster paced life, and we're already quite fast. So do we want that? It's up to us.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point about, sometimes it's not always good to have decision-making going so quickly. And we've seen, I don't want to say Brexit, but that was actually a long process. But still, I mean, it can lead to, does it lead to sort of less, problem results, for example, when you have that kind of quick decision-making or the need to respond quickly.
Okay, so on the Brexit, it was quite interesting because that happened during the election. And I asked Matt, so what would Flux do about this? And he said there's no way that such a profound decision would be acted on with such a small margin. I mean, ultimately it came down to 2% that swung it. And he said there's no way that such a profound decision would be made on that. We would call for another election. So then it would be more involved. Do we want that? And I'm looking at the result of Brexit, and we're all saying yes. But it's our time, it's our effort, and it's our energy that's going to be involved in making that happen.
Yeah, and I think that brings up the issue of how much involvement do we want from the public as well. That's a really key critical thing. I'm just thinking of, I think it was Panama City last year, had a campaign around inform your local council or whatever around potholes or something like that. So they had crazy amounts of tweets coming in a kind of almost negative way to the local council. It did get the problem solved, but perhaps it wasn't a good way to necessarily have that kind of engagement. So, I mean, what are more effective ways to potentially engage with constituents and government? Do you have some examples that you work on?
Yeah, so there's a few examples out there. I think even in the Victorian government, we've got the Open Data Initiative, which is all about taking data sets and making them publicly available so that small startups or even independent entrepreneurs and freelancers who understand how to play with the data, whether they're data scientists and maybe they team up with the developer, come up with new solutions. So there's been all types of apps that have come out of that, whether it's something as simple as a train tracking app in real time, but ultimately the cost of developing these solutions, which could have an immediate benefit for people, much lower than what the cost would be if we were to do them internally. Because what happens oftentimes, and there's another report on this from Gartner that shows that 70% or 68% of government IT projects tend to fail, because oftentimes when it comes to this decision making, generally there's people don't want to take accountability. So we outsource that decision. We call a meeting, we call another meeting. Before you know it, there's like 30 or 40 people involved in this project. One person wants this, another person wants that. The project becomes very, very big and complex, which means it's more prone to risk, it's more prone to falling over, costs skyrocket. I think 30 or 40% of biggest IT projects are over budget. And so, yeah, ultimately, I think co-design with whether it's NGOs, private enterprise, academia, and other organizations and bodies, I think is one great way to move forward and solve that problem.
It's kind of a bit like that hackathon methodology where you can get different people in the room, the hacker, the hustler, the hipster, humanitarian, and we've seen things like Policy Hack actually do some of those things. Perhaps there's more opening for those kinds of things than for that process.
I mean, on Policy Hack as well, I think it's funny you should mention that, because it's not just about talking about things, it's about actually taking action. Like, I spent a lot of years in the corporate world. I spent time at the Victorian Auditor General's office as well, so I know government, consultant for government departments like defence, treasury and whatnot. We have a tendency to just meet, but action items aren't recorded, actions aren't taken. And Policy Hack was one where that took place about 11 months ago now. One of the actions that came out of that was to run National Lemonade Day, where we teach kids entrepreneurship. Nothing's happened. Here at Collective Campus, team of 5, we've been running Lemonade Stand. We've had over 200 kids through the program. We're running that across the country. And it's just a small team, relentless focus on the problem and just going out getting it done. Whereas Policy Hack, all the resources that government has, hang out, yeah, let's do Lemonade Day. Nothing's happening.
So what is it stopping that? Like, what are the obstacles in that process? Mike, do you have some thoughts about that?
Well, I'll use the example you gave around Twitter and Panama City. I see that as a great opportunity. If you're getting all this data about, where you portal, where the problems in your roads are, that's massive. So the opportunity there is to seek collaboration from the community and look for ways to help deal with that influx of data. Because
maybe not through Twitter. I mean, I can't imagine the minister wanting lots of tweets about.
Why not? Because
true.
Because
true.
The same. A lot of companies use Twitter to do sentiment analysis and find out how people are feeling. The tools are there. The tools are absolutely there. It's just more looking at how you can leverage those tools. So if you're having, to use that example, if you're having a lot of tweets and coming at you, and if you're connected to the local community of developers and all that kind of stuff, the people to tap onto it. And if you don't, putting out information for us to say who can help us with this problem, to help see where these are coming from, or map it out on a map or something like that. It's not $1 million project. It's literally it's stuff that can be done very, very quickly in 2 or 3 weeks, because there are people in the private sector who are part of the community that are willing to help. So I think my point is you can look for ways to engage the public to help you solve these problems, because as I said, every problem is an opportunity. So if you're getting a lot of data, that's an opportunity to use that data. So yeah.
Well, I think that brings us into a point about data collection, because that's a critical component. I mean, accurate collection of data is a critical issue. Dale, do you have some thoughts around why that's important and how that can, how government can be more effective at collecting data? I mean, we have so much. What do we do with it?
And okay, so just to build on what's been said already, it's a lot of the time companies, government force people into using a particular app, whereas they are already using Twitter, they are using Facebook, Reddit, even Instagram. Why not just utilize what people are already doing and collating it by way of a hashtag or a particular photograph or something, some way to connect what everybody is doing anyway. This is already happening. We have quite active people on Twitter. The way Flux works is to get a specialist. So there's one person that's already active. They're already representing what they're passionate about and have them be the go-to person. So it's already happening. So it's just a matter of connecting with the right people, utilising a method that collates it together and having a place that it can go. So it's not about doing anything different. It's just collating what we've already got. Because it puts, again, more pressure, like I was saying before, about who wants to get another notification from another app. I'm just going dizzy when somebody says I have to join something else. No, I'm already quite good at what I'm doing. How about you come to me, tell me what you need, and I'll feed it to you. So it's a way of utilising the information way more effectively.
I think that's also a great point. Whole concept of not invented here, which is not just within government, but also within large organisations. We have this feeling that we need to be seen to be doing something, so we do something from scratch even though it already exists. We saw that recently with startup files being commissioned by the federal government to basically compile a report on the startup ecosystem, even though there's been a couple of reports released in the past couple of years from Deloitte, from Google on that ecosystem. And you know, people in the entrepreneurship traps will tell you that one of the key ways to grow your business is to leverage existing platforms. So Twitter being one of those. So why try and reinvent the wheel? Not only do you have to create something from scratch, which is incredibly difficult, and if we tie it with the decision-making process, the fact that this thing's just going to blow up, and once you built it, you need to get people to start using that as well. So why not use what's already been built, what people are already using?
And also connect with the people that are already very active, because a lot of the time there's no reward, there's no acknowledgement of that. So once they're fed and thanked, then they will shine. They will just be like, what else do you want me to do? What else do you want me to tailor? I'll do that. And people are actively already passionate about what's happening in the world. And they're the key people that you want to connect with. It's just a matter of finding them, thanking them, acknowledging them, and requesting or asking, finding out what they think, how they can forward it. And you'll probably find they're already on track with what you want anyway.
So it's more perhaps just opening up dialogue, more dialogue with finding out what's going on out there. How many people use Twitter regularly as part of what they do, as part of their job, essentially, with their work? High levels of engagement? Well, that's probably an area. Maybe it's education. How many people would like to learn to use Twitter better?
Yes, exactly.
Because it is a powerful tool, and I think there are existing tools. There's internal tools and startups like Slack, for example, that can create channels within organisations. So is it more engagement that needs to happen, more dialogue, more events like this?
I think so. And also the questions. It's the questions rather than instructions, but actually drawing data from people, and that by way of asking questions. What do you think? How can this be handled better? What are your thoughts? And then be open and ready for the feedback, because you'll get a lot, and tailor that.
And I think that's just a great mindset for government to have, because we see it with startup founders, for example, who have these grand ideas, but they don't. Like, I have a great idea for grocers, but you haven't talked to any grocers. You haven't talked to the people that you have this idea for. It's the same thing with government. Oh, I have this great idea for education. You're not talking to teachers. You're not talking to the people on the front line that actually do the work. So it's having that mindset, engaging and thinking about being more empathetic to the areas that you're focusing on. It makes a huge difference. And as she said, if you engage with these people, they're passionate, they spend their whole life there. So they'll give you the information you need.
And using the tools is what you're saying.
Yes.
So it's not so much, because I know government have amazing consulting processes, and there are protocols and processes for consultation. Perhaps it's just energizing that process with technology.
And understanding it, comprehending it, utilising it the most effective and powerful way. You've got 140 characters. And sometimes it's a matter of using the right hashtag, sometimes it's a matter of following the right people. So having somebody, an expert, come in and train your staff, because people are communicating.
And it's also important to know that different types of people engage with different platforms. Not everybody
absolutely.
Not everybody's on Facebook, not everybody's on Reddit. So, but you can think of clever ways to engage with people based on where they are.
Yeah, you don't want to isolate people. I think Brexit showed that as well. Like progressive libertarians thought, oh yeah, no, we're going to remain, but they're all living in this bubble. They don't realize that people in the north of England who went from these particular areas who they don't associate with, don't go to the same school, don't hang out on Twitter or these other platforms, different values, they felt like the government wasn't taking care of them or wasn't representing them, or that the EU, they just didn't get it. And so when Brexit happened, it was like 52 to 48, like all the libertarians, all the progressives, whatever, like, oh, what? Are you serious? Because they're just living in a bubble. So the lesson there is we don't know what we don't know. We need to get out of our bubble. We need to speak to, as Mike was alluding to, if it's a grocery store out or education, I speak to constituents or stakeholders in that space, understand people. If you don't understand people, how are you supposed to serve?
Yeah, absolutely, great point. I want to move on a little bit more about sort of what the forthcoming technologies are going to come into play. Things like, I suppose we've seen an example recently is in Estonia, and blockchain technology, for example. That has been used to disrupt government processes or even virtualize some of the government facilities for the better. For example, you can change your name through this technology. You can look up medical records. I think they've even used voting. Voting is also part of that technology, facilitated through blockchain tech. First of all, for those people that might not know, what is blockchain technology?
It's basically a huge database, which is an accurate ledger, which is visible, transparent. It makes microtransactions peer-to-peer, so we can just interact with each other directly. BitNation is one example. There's, I've got some written down because there's just so many. There's a business in Sydney that's doing ID, so you can just store your ID there, and then whenever you need to show any documentation, you would just direct the company there. So it's in a peer-to-peer decentralized database, it's extremely difficult to hack, so it keeps information secure. There's Ethereum. Augur is a prediction market, so it gives people an opportunity to predict, which is also quite interesting around governance. So in the example of Flux, you have a specialist that would run a bill by the constituents in one particular area and get an answer, so there's feedback to the government how that would work. And it may not be that particular area, but another area would be more receptive to ideas. So you get a prediction, a sense of ways to govern. There's also storage, which is like an Uber for computers. So you've got extra data space on your computer, you can have somebody use it, like Uber, and pay you for it. So there's storage. There's also MadeSafe, is a totally decentralized internet, which is happening. That's been working before Bitcoin. It's like 9 years in the making. It's a long-term project, obviously, but that's Uberizing everybody's computer. The Alexandra Library has a system where you can upload media and be paid for it. So peer-to-peer, it can be 50 cents or $1. Blockchain Bitcoin makes microtransactions extremely simple anywhere around the world. And again, it's peer-to-peer, so it's just, I'll pay you, there's no middleman, and whatever amount I want. So it's really making connections and networks a lot simpler.
What about security around that? It's a huge issue and concern always with data, sensitive data. can you talk about the security of that technology and what governments could be doing to use it first and foremost, how they can use it effectively, and how they can also give assurance to their constituents that it's safe, the data's safe, that's being done.
It's quite interesting. We've got the census coming up on August the 9th, and from what I've heard is that it's compulsory. It's being facilitated by a company paid by the government, and they're saying that they will secure the data, but people that are very into privacy are asking exactly how, what kind of encryption methods are being used. This is the first time we're actually actively engaging and finding out what is going to happen with our data, because it is a huge concern. So decentralization, which is what I'm passionate about, means that I store the data on my computer, you on yours, you on yours. If you want to attack me, you only get the data that I have. You don't have access to anybody else's information. So as far as having government participate in this, I'm not quite sure, because it's the antithesis to how you function. However, I would suggest that you do a lot of homework into how this works, because it's happening whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And it's a way to find out how data can be stored quite securely. It's now an option. Anybody that's into privacy, there's the encrypted apps, Signal, Threema, Wicker, WhatsApp. They're being used more commonly. Ad blockers are now very common. So a lot of the storage of data is a pertinent issue right now. And so at Melbourne's Bitcoin Trading Technology Centre, we suggest people start asking, what is happening with your data? Who's keeping it? How do they secure it? So we can educate people in starting to ask. It's a very important question now.
So with the move into this technology, obviously there's that accompanying security, safety, privacy piece as well. But what about things like, and it obviously helps improve processes. My sort of broadening that question, what about things like decision making? Can it be used to help us make better decisions? Can the data be used, just collectively to kind of help us, tell us where money should be going in budgets, for example? Is there capacity for that?
Yeah, so one of the applications of the blockchain is, currently we have a system where you vote for your representative, they go off and do their thing for, say, 3 years or so, and you hope that they do the right thing by you and that they don't break any promises. But what the blockchain actively supports is that as a member of that blockchain, you can vote on policy decisions as they come to hand, and therefore you can constantly influence the decisions that your local representative makes, or your state representative, federal, whatever it is, on an ongoing basis. And then the decisions that they make will reflect what the community wants at that point in time, not necessarily what the government thinks is in their own best interest. Whether or not that is good or bad, you saw what happened at Brexit, and whether that's good or bad, who knows, but I think the overwhelming sort of consensus is that it's bad for the economy over there, but that is one way that you can truly have a government that reflects the needs and wants of the majority.
Yeah. So what about your thoughts, Mike, about how we're using technology to facilitate connections, to get better results, but also then moving into how can that data be used to actually make decisions? Like, are we going to get to a point where, maybe AI, we have a very sophisticated system that can help us make the decisions for us, for example? Are we going to get to that point?
No. It's called Skynet.
It's Skynet. It's a bit scary, yeah.
To use an analogy, it's what this is doing, this technology, is it's localizing decision making. So, for example, around food, we saw there was a huge concern around chemically laden food that pushed people into farmers markets. So farmers markets then get to negotiate with people on the streets, on the ground, about the prices they want. You can find out the information where the food comes from. If you think computing like that, that's what's happening. So the decision making becomes relevant to the area that question is being asked. As far as being taken over by AI, that's very definitely a possibility. Very definitely. One of the ways that, and I think it's important that we do stand up and start to interrupt the decision making that the artificial intelligence people are making, because it's very technology based and it can factor us out. I mean, a lot of it is looking for the, based on Darwinian theory, the strongest will survive. So what happens as we age? We will then be cut out unless we can create a program where the older disabled, maybe, I don't know, some way not so fast, can be included in the process. That's not going to happen unless we do that.
Yeah.
So it's quite a good idea to be involved in these technologies, to learn how they work and to put your thoughts in.
That brings up a really big issue around empathy and design, for example.
Yes.
And very important with any technology that's coming into a government landscape, to make sure the human element is in there.
Yeah.
Mike, you have some thoughts on that?
Well, you would just in reference to data. So I teach a subject of knowledge called knowledge technologies, and there's a key difference between data, information, and knowledge. Data is just stuff you store, right? Information is what's relevant. Knowledge is stuff that, based on all this information, that you make knowledge is wisdom you can pretend. So it's all well and good to have data, but if you don't have the tools to get information and knowledge, then that data is useless.
Yeah, so passing on the knowledge capture, the thing that can't hopefully be replaced by an AI.
Yeah.
Although there are definitely
artificial intelligence is useful to a point. Artificial intelligence is useful to help us see where there's.
Yes.
It's like, oh look, there's this cluster of stuff here. Maybe there's something there you want to look at. But in the end, as she alluded, it's all about humans. Technology is just a tool that humans use to get by.
And
so
computers will think better about us.
That probably definitely.
So it's while those tools are useful, and I think they're great. It's more thinking about how we can leverage the stuff that we have to make better decisions.
Absolutely.
And so it's also input the data in.
Yeah,
and factor ourselves in.
And it also, I guess, the other side of that is transparency as well. And I guess it makes all of us more transparent. And I think that's challenging sometimes in political environments where there is that sort of media spin cycle and there's a need to present certain information. How does it make us more? Does it make us more transparent?
That's a great point. And I think running with the theme of blockchain as well. Going back to the Haiti earthquakes a few years ago, foreign aid was made available. It was about $500 million to build 130 homes for 130,000 people, and ultimately 6 homes were built. And this was because the foreign aid was sent to a third world country where the officials were corrupt, there was no transparency, and the blockchain actually supports because it's got public key infrastructure. If you don't know what that is, Google it afterwards, PKI, but basically where you have a public key and a private key. And in order for that person on the receiving end to actually access the money, they need to unlock it with their own private key. So if you've got, say, 100,000 people, their own private key, the money is allocated to them, that person can only access that money. So you can't have a corrupt official come in and just take all of that.
Yeah, so the accountability is a huge bonus.
Transparency is kind of baked in the technology, because anything you do has a trail. You can't 100% delete it. So the application of that across the board is very useful, because we see that, like, a lot of people think, all right, the world is going to heaven. I think it's because we're just more informed. There's more information. It's like these things were happening before, it's just that you didn't know about them. So in a way, it's a blessing and a curse in a way, because the more informed, then you have the opportunity to be afraid and cover in the corner, or you can be more informed and be able to make better decisions as to what you do, where you eat, where your food comes from, all that kind of stuff. So transparency is from my point, is great, and keeps government accountable.
Yep.
Sorry, on the audit trail that Mike mentioned, that's another thing about blockchain, because it's distributed. You've got tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of computers around the world. If you wanted to change something, you need to basically rewrite the entire history of the blockchain across all of these computers, which is impossible. If you try it, tinker with it, everyone can see you because it's transparent. So you've got the audit trail, you've got the transparency, and it's updated like every 10 minutes. The whole blockchain, every computer run is distributed network basically refreshes updated transactions. And those transactions are actually kept separate to the identity behind it. So you can see someone transferred $1 million here.
Okay. Good job.
Hillary Clinton. I mean, can you imagine her email trail if she had known that everybody would be able to see this? And that would have affected how she acted and what she said. So, and I can imagine her tech team trying to explain how this happened. Whereas if you have a politician coming into a system where we know that's automatically available, it's transparent, we are going to have to account for our actions immediately. And in the example of government, when we consider, some people say that a government is acting on behalf of people, which is the true intent, then do we have a right to know where our money goes, what is being said? The blockchain technology makes that available. So I don't know that it's actually a drawcard for politicians, but it is definitely for the people that want to see where their money's being spent and what their politicians are saying.
I mean, in fact, on a positive side, that can also build trust as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that, look, you've got to look at it as a positive, and even a person working within government, because there is a standard that's a bit higher. I mean, it's an opportunity for leadership. Like, I remember I worked in government for a short while, and it was constantly reiterated to us that we were the leader. We've got to be the leaders. We're the ones that have got to be the best examples to everybody. And I think that's important. I think if we can find that, I mean, that's critical.
And it will give a voice to the people that are not being heard because they're being too ethical. You know, that kind of doesn't go down in some companies. So those people will have their conversation documented so that then they can be then the experts in that area. So yes, it will feed people that do want to be accountable, and there are some people who do.
Yeah. So we're moving from even less about light speed responses, more about moving into good leadership. Would this stuff make better leaders? Yes.
It attracts the right people.
Yeah. I think with any technology, you can use it for good, you can use it for bad, but more importantly, you can use it to make more informed decisions.
Yeah.
So you hope if someone has more information, they can make better decisions that include everybody and serve very good.
So it could actually free us up. Do you think it'll free us up, the use of technology, obviously in the right ways, to focus on other issues effectively? Like if we automated something like, I know there's a parking bot in the UK that can now help people get out of parking fines. Did anyone hear about that?
Yeah.
It's had a phenomenal success rate, but I mean that's not necessarily getting out of parking fines, but the point being that you've automated a process that basically can help that department not have to focus on that, but focus on something else like, design of where our traffic flow is or something like that.
There's one idea that's been floating around, there's a lot in BTC, but around public transport. So for example, if there were a way to pay for a ticket, because a lot of the time the machines don't work on the bus, they don't have change, whatever, but if I could get onto a train and just buy my ticket, so it's kind of like give me an amnesty, but it shows my intent that I wanted to pay. I'm not acting on criminally. I didn't have time or whatever, but I've covered myself to pay for that one ticket. So in court, I can present that and say that I've actually paid. So it gives me an option which I don't have available to me now. I'm actually forced into being a criminal if I don't have a ticket. Yeah. So it will definitely alter society and I think we would actually shine. I think a lot of good people would step up if we had systems available to just recognise our time constraints or our limitations.
Just not because of the public transport example. I found it funny that they can fine you automatically on the tram, but you can't pay for it.
Yes.
You can pay on the tram.
Yes.
It's like
That's true. It's a very cool weird quirk we have here.
Yeah.
But that does bring me on to this really positive aspect of this, which is the need to people. People are critical to any kind of disruption. and the need to train them. How important is training, as we just started off, great tools, but if no one has to use them, what do we do? So how do we go about that?
Yeah, training is fundamental. We look at a lot of organizations who've had entrenched values, like GE is a great example. Culture steeped in Six Sigma, inside the building thinking, comprehensive planning, which once upon a time worked, but now with the world moving as quickly as it does, 5-year plans don't work. 5 years from now, who knows what the world's going to look like. But teaching people agile methodologies, lean startup, design thinking, so we've got more empathy behind our product design, is all well and good, but what's fundamental is the underlying culture and mindset. Because if you've got to taught people all these philosophies, but they're still afraid to take risks, they're still afraid to make decisions, they're still afraid of small failures, failures are hidden, no one talks about them, then it's kind of pointless. Because all of these philosophies, agile, lean startup, etc., are all based on rapid experimentation, Socratic thinking. All I know is I have enough different, so anyway, but to find out is by building as quickly as I can, testing these key assumptions and learning, and iterating. But that is, I think, at the moment, in most startup departments and agencies, a little bit it's a foreign concept.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the mindset and the environment to adapt. If you don't foster that, then that's where innovation goes and dies. Just the environment needs to be there. So as Steve said, you can read all these books, think all these things, and get all this knowledge, but if you put them into action, nothing happens. In our company, for example, we try to automate everything. Like if I have to send an email twice to say the same thing, I try and automate that. There's a bot for that. There's a bot that automatically replies to people that inquiries and puts a calendar to-do item for to call them the next day. Stuff like that. It just makes my life easy because I don't have to worry about that anymore because someone else I've outsourced that to a machine. So and everybody does that within the teams. Like, this is getting too long. Not like that.
Yep.
And by providing people with those tools and the access and permission to do that, then they can make change.
Yeah.
So I realised I didn't close out on GE example. So what GE did, they trained 5,000 middle managers in the lean startup, but quickly found that they couldn't implement these methodologies with the culture and mindset.
Yeah. So culture's got to accompany. In fact, culture is actually the ultimate form of disruption. Having a great culture, in a way, has to accompany the innovation, which then leads to what processes need to potentially be automated, and then what are the focus points or priority points from that? Would you say that?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. The education is critical. We're just determining that people are on the same page before any further developments can happen. So at Melbourne's Bitcoin Technology Centre, we have RMIT students who come in, they learn about startups and Bitcoin, and they pass their subject at RMIT. And we found at the very first project that they didn't quite comprehend the difference between decentralized systems and open source versus centralized. And we only found out toward the end that they didn't have that understanding. So in the second group, we did an exercise where we gave people a real life example of how a decentralized system works. And then we gave them an example of a centralized system. So we did that in the very first session. And then once they had the two distinctions, we said, so this is how Bitcoin works. When somebody asks you if there's a CEO, you can confidently say there is none because it's a decentralized system. And from that basis, then we could start to learn. But it's really important that there's a common understanding that people are on the same page to start with. Because a lot of the time it also sounds really daunting. These new words, even now, there's so many new words in this domain, it's incredible. And I feel ignorant, I feel stupid. So it takes sometimes courage, so creating an informal setting where people can confidently ask those questions, they know that it's a safe environment. That's the very beginning. And then start to grow.
Absolutely. Well, I might wrap up just the discussion and open up to the floor, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions. just, I suppose, from what some key things now that we could be doing right now, perhaps just immediately in the government sector, what are some of the key things we could think about that might serve us to sort of propelling us onto a, to be globally competitive and an innovation nation, effectively?
I'll be talking about that in my talk at 11 a.m., which is all about what you can do as an individual to start driving this change, because it's difficult to change everything all at once, but there are things that we can start doing today to start driving that change. So,
excellent. Okay, well, we might hold on, but Mike, you have any last thoughts? Even obviously the world's going through this work culture generally, but specifically government, what do governments need to be thinking about in the next 5 to 10 years as far as innovation goes and responding to
Well, it's a broad conflict, but the little things, for example, if you're a government employee, coming to this is a good enough step. And coming to a couple of these, going to events, going to hackathons, there's GovHack coming this weekend, I think. It exposes you to new ideas and new ways of thinking. And by doing that, it allows your mind to be open to a new way of thinking and a new way of doing things. Technology, as I said, is just a tool. You don't need to know how to do all this stuff, but you need to be aware of it and know how the application of a particular tool can help you in your job. And the only way you can know that is if you engage with people and if you expose yourself to these things. So from a micro level, that's what I said. From a macro level, you kind of need leaders that get that and that can allow people to learn and grow and educate themselves and improve. So and give them the space to take action, to do little things that are safe to fail in a way. Providing an environment for that allows for change.
Okay, and no politician robots. No politician robots. Okay. Maybe one day.
So I think it's really important that you stand up in your work environment and meet with your manager, make a space for you to learn. So suggest perhaps that you have 2 hours a week of going to conferences, going to workshops, reading information, become the expert for your environment, learn about how these systems work. Even though there may not be a monetary return immediately, there will be eventually. You'll be the person that will be the go-to source for your company. So if whatever you're passionate about, there are so many areas for this. It could be around food, it could be around gamification, it could be around creating a system within your environment. Practice something decentralized within your workspace so that people can get a sense of how it works. Actually experience it for yourself. Is it faster or not? What can speed it up? It's basically, these are systems. These are all systems on the board. From my end, it looks like, if I look at the world, the mainframe is falling apart. So we are needing smaller systems, more localized. Start in your work environment, even in your home. I've got a gardening project where I'm involving my neighbours. I want to be known as the person, the decentralized queen. So give yourself a title and become, if you, you are interested, you're here. Go to your employer and just make it important to learn.
Fantastic. Really great advice. Everyone, just give a round of applause for our panel. Really love to hear your thoughts and just throw some questions out there. I know you had a question here.
Well, one question, something I've been wrangling with is that I've come to my own conclusion that I don't think it's lack of knowledge that is hindering this process. The knowledge is out there. So I think going back to that issue of culture, how do you see us transitioning? Because public sector, avoidance in public sector is clearly, like when you were talking about decision making, it's clearly a challenge. Okay? On the other hand, that came from somewhere as well. Is the community ready to be a bit more forgiving of the public sector if we start experimenting? Is that a two-way sort of thing? Is the community ready to move away from the expert mentality? Or the government is expected to be the expert. If the government relinquishes that role and actually say, well, we all need to come together, what do we need culturally to make that happen?
Sure. So two things. One, I don't think people are ready. The recent federal election showed that. I think the coalition lost a lot of love because of their focus on innovation, which most people, well, not most people, but a lot of people didn't get. Like, what they're focusing on is innovation stuff. Why shouldn't they be propping up, dying industries? But at the same time, it comes back to compartmentalizing this change initially. Like, you don't want to just roll out, like I said, start rapid experimentation sort of philosophy across government, across the department, across an agency. But there are small things you can do where it is, like Michael was saying, safer to fail. I like to use this analogy from bonfire to bushfire with small teams. Maybe 3 or 5 people start doing things certain ways, start getting those learnings, start teaching the rest of the team slowly. Because culture change is a marathon, it's not a sprint, it's not something we're going to affect overnight. But it is about compartmentalizing in safe to fail environments and slowly branching out. And therefore, doing that in a way where things don't fall over and that the constituents don't scream bloody murder saying, oh, what are you guys doing? You don't know what you're doing. Let's face it, constituents will take any opportunity to jump up and down about something. So we don't want to give them that opportunity.
There's also dialogue as well. I don't know, there's a platform called RSA. Does everyone know about RSA, which is a really wonderful forum to allow governments to pose a question to their constituents for which their constituents can actually respond. Many responses, and it's incredibly valuable to local government particularly. So there are some startups out there and organisations out there that will bridge that dialogue as well. I think that's another key component to try and get the culture change. But
so I disagree. I say that the election clearly showed that we want independence. They were going really what was voted for was a separation from this current system. That indicates to me that people are ready. So again, I'll just come back to what I first said, it's finding the people that are, this is not a blanket technology, this is not a blanket world anymore. This is, each individual area has different concerns, different leaders, different areas to address. So find your leaders and give them power. I think we're ready.
Yeah.
We've got access to all of this information. We know immediately what's happening in the world. We're not relying on media.
I agree and disagree. I think certain demographics. It comes back to the Brexit thing. The reason why the Greens picked up a few more votes, progressive libertarians wanting more independence, wanting more influence. Same as some of the independents who got seats. But ultimately, you have other people who perhaps aren't as progressive, aren't as ready. So not everyone is ready. Certain people are, and I agree with you there. But then there's other people who didn't get it. Like White Roy, the Assistant Minister for Innovation, lost his seat. He made a lot of noise while he was in government, and obviously paid the price for it. And all he focused on pretty much was innovation. So yes and no.
And I think it also comes down to giving people an experience of what this new world supposedly looks like. And when you come back to farmers markets, it's the simplest way. It's like we used to go to supermarkets and buy food from companies that we eventually questioned their ethics, and now we have the choice to go to farmers markets. So given the choice, then what are people going to do? So create little constituencies of what's relevant to each area and just see what works and what doesn't. But it may not necessarily work in a different area.
Yeah, I think people are ready. I think it depends on how you pitch it. Literally, the language you use in different constituents matters. Because even though, to use the last election, it was about the innovation agenda, but I'm in that space I wasn't excited about.
Yes.
But if you speak to people, if you open up the dialogue and don't try and think and kind of speak to people on their level, then it allows people to understand. And when you build an empathy, and that means you can take people along the journey. Because if you don't do that, then people feel
they go back.
Yeah. That. So
yeah, culture change is a long process, absolutely. Anyone else got a question for these brilliant minds?
We're giving made up numbers, but for the sake of argument, say that 2 to 10% of people basically complain no matter what government does. Given that, as a bureaucrat or an elected official, you have a profound incentive to try and minimize those complaints. Anytime anything fails and can't be spun, you're going to get a much higher percentage than that 2 to 10%.
Yeah.
If you're in a bureaucracy, a city government, state government, what have you, that's a big problem. You get 30% of people complaining, you probably aren't going to have a job for very long. That's a profound disincentive to experiment, because experiment by definition requires a willingness to fail, or it's not an experiment. Any comment on how you reconcile, unlike the two opinions which aren't mutually exclusive about the interpretation of the election, how you reconcile what seems to be mutually exclusive challenges? How do you encourage government or enable government and bureaucracy to experiment and fail when the fundamentals of the system have a profound discouraging effect on experiment?
I think when you experiment, when you experiment at a huge level, when you say, I'm going to put this huge policy in place, when it's not been tested, then obviously that's a bigger risk. So it's a case of de-risking, I would say. So the way you experiment is based on the appetite for risk. Different constituents have different appetites for risk. So you need to kind of tailor that and say, okay, well, this thing, this particular thing, the concept you use about the compartmentalized and then bushfire, and then bushfire analogies is great, because you try something small. If it's working, you can keep spreading that out. So it's a different mindset to think, I want to make a change and I'm going to do this one policy or this one big thing. I think politics has a history of doing that. So it's almost thinking back to, okay, let's try this micro level changes to see what works, and then and test it, and then based on that we have data. And when you have data, you have people saying, oh, this thing has worked, this thing has worked, this thing has worked, then it's easy to convince people. And obviously you might have a 10% that say, I'm not happy. But if you've done the work and you're actually on the right track, then it's you have a better outcome for everybody.
It's also courageous leadership too, and having those leaders in the organisations to say, and yes, we are going to try this. Yes, we are going to fail. Yes, we're going to be open and transparent about it, and we're going to tell the media about what we're doing as well. And that's where that dialogue thing comes in as well, potentially. Like, you have to have courage to audaciously fail sometimes. But people, I think, are a bit more open.
I love that. The communication techniques really need to be explored, how the relationship between government and constituents, how dialogue flows, just meeting people to people, finding out what that 2% are concerned about. There's always going to be, I think aiming for 100% of anything is unrealistic. So going with, we are not going to succeed all the time. That's just the way it is. What can we do about the people that are not aligned with what we're doing? Find open dialogue.
Any last questions?
What are the big differences between innovating in this sector and, say, innovating in at a personal level or serving personal needs? Is typically you've got key interests in the community, established power groups and agendas, and that means there's often a strong power imbalance when any sort of conversation takes place in the public domain about this. And obviously, if you're creating disruption, if you're trying to have an honest and transparent conversation, one of the challenges is, how do you maintain transparency? How do you maintain honesty when a certain number of players in the space are not interested in either of those things, and you may not have control of it? So, don't any insights in that challenge.
I draw parallels there between public sector and large corporations who have stakeholders, shareholders, who basically wield significant decisions. And ultimately, you've got 3-quarter reporting, 6 months annual reports to worry about, and that's what people care about. And so that can basically handcuff you, and all you care about is generating that ROI, 7% returns, whatever that shareholders expect, whatever dividends they expect. But again, it comes back to this overarching theme here, which is you're going to do things in a way where, one, the messaging is right for that particular stakeholder, for these powerful lobbies and whatnot, but also that you experiment in a way where it's not actually going to upset them. What's the greatest amount of risk or worst possible outcome that they're willing to accept and work within that. It comes back to smart failures, not big, dumb failures. I mean, we look at, Mike alluded to that earlier, where he said traditionally that's what government's done. It's like, let's fail big, like Mikey. I mean,
The system.
yeah, that's the system ever. I mean, even to this day, we keep forking out money to prop it up and maintain it. Could that experiment have been done at a much smaller, cheaper scale, and could have identified what the problems were earlier rather than identifying after what was it, $1.5 billion rollout. So that's one example. Not even going to talk about Octopus or all the other systems in the world that cost about 1/15 the amount and serve a larger population. But, I just did. Sorry.
I was listening to a podcast last night about a guy that created the Merkle tree, which is the foundation of the Ethereum structure. And what he said was to look forward into the future, say 20 years, which is sometimes quite difficult for people, but to come down to the very basics. So, for example, with an election, is voting for this person going to make my life easier? Very basic. Yes or no? No, why not? Yes, how come? Yes, I'll vote, whatever. But extending a question out for 20 years, then having a pathway, because little projects are always usually part of the whole. So if people can get the big picture and realise that, well, my decision wasn't complied with here, but maybe the next time they can see that there's a chance to evolve that, grow with it. Maybe next time my question will get answered this way, but it's part of a big picture. It's not an immediate yes, no. And having looked at, again, coming back to the basics, is this going to make my life any easier?
So focusing on the end result, what's the
Yeah.
big change that we're all working toward, and moving away from some of those divisive, maybe focusing those groups on the big picture and maybe helping them get to that place rather than the
And there's going to have to be some compromise at some point. This is looking at examples of teams. They're building up to finals and going overseas and stuff. There's a big picture, and not everybody's needs can be met every single time. It's unrealistic. We have to get straight with ourselves.
Well, I think we probably come to the end of that session. Just gone a little bit over, but I wanted to thank you very much for those questions. We'll have the opportunity to talk to our panel afterwards, and I encourage dialogue and be open and get some of these problems out there, because we could come up with some solutions today. Really great ideas. So thank you, panel. Thank you, panel. Firstly, my name's Anna from that startup show. If you want to know more about the show and you want to be a panelist or you've got some thoughts, we'll probably do a government edition. Definitely come and have a chat. But thank you for having us. And yeah, let's go to break.